morning. Joining us now, CEO of Disaster Recovery Institute International, Chloe Demrovsky. Chloe, thank you so much for being here. So we're seeing some of the pictures there, sort of extraordinary power when this storm hit. So in terms of, it's going to be days, if not weeks, for these communities to start to recover. But tell us, what should happen now in these crucial first hours?
So the first thing they have to do is they have to survey the damage, then they have to deal with the water. One of the big problems with hurricanes, obviously, is that there's too much water in all the wrong places. And in this particular storm, you had torrential rainfall as well as the storm surge. So you have it coming from all sides. Then you have the wind that has created all kinds of issues. So you have to survey, do the life safety piece, and then try to restore systems as best as possible. So there's lots of players involved in that. The state and local governments are there on the scene doing their jobs, all of the utility companies. The federal government is going to step in at the later stages. They're prepared to offer the support with the disaster declaration and all of those things, but that's a little bit later stage. Businesses are also a key part of this that doesn't get covered very much. So the businesses that are on site in that area have been shifting operations, making sure that, they can continue to employ people locally, that there's not a bigger economic disruption or supply chain disruption related to something like this. And then, of course, community members need to check out for each other because, we talk about first responders, but the first responder is very likely to be a family member, a neighbor, a friend, somebody who is nearby who can check on people who are, we're hearing stories about 7-foot storm surge in homes that have 10-foot ceilings, right? So it's very important for people to kind of check in on people, but also be careful about getting into that water with down power lines. That's very dangerous.
Right, the conditions still very dire, as you say. Now, the Tampa region spared a direct hit, but still there's a lot of people who live where the storm did come across shore. Florida, no stranger to hurricanes. How is their infrastructure? How would you grade their ability to withstand a storm like this?
Well, it's a really scary thing when you have a lot of development right on the coastline, and at the same time you have the natural buffers to something like a hurricane, the mangroves, the swampy regions. Those areas are kind of being built over, and then they're being paved, and so that pavement acts like a sink. And then you have all of these big buildings right on the water that are right in the path of the storm. So that creates a really dangerous situation moving forward. And we think about moving into floodplains, building in floodplains, that creates a really dangerous situation for decades to come. And then you think about an area like Tampa is a major metro region. It's been growing. A lot of areas like this have been growing, particularly in the pandemic. They've gained a lot of people. Those people may not be familiar with hurricanes. They might not understand the risks that are posed, the challenges that they're facing. And then it's compounded by the fact that the Tampa region had double-digit inflation earlier this year. So there may be even less money in budget set aside for buying things like generators, extra food, stocking up on water, all those really essential items during a hurricane.
And then briefly, give us a sense as to what sort of resiliency measures should be put in place. We're in an era, of course, of climate change, storms like this happening more and more frequently. What can be done better the next time?
So a review of building codes certainly needs to be looked at to make sure that we're hardening the built environment, but also learning from nature and restoring some of those coastal areas that may not have been there. They can be pretty too. They can be built to look like parks, but it's really important to create a buffer zone there, especially in these low-lying areas that are vulnerable to storm surge. There needs to be somewhere for the water to go. So all of this pavement, there has to be permeable areas. There has to be somewhere for the water to drain out rapidly. And we need to make sure that we're being careful about where we're building, looking at how those floodplains are going to change with climate change models through the years, so that if we're looking at something like managed retreat, it's not popular, but it might be a part of it, especially when you consider that property insurance right now is triple what it is in other states in Florida, and that's with a state-owned insurer covering the bill.
Yeah, conversations that people are going to need to start having in the decades ahead. CEO of Disaster Recovery Institute International, Chloe Demrovsky, thank you so much for starting us off here today. Still ahead.